So there's been a lot of discussion, especially with the Nintendo Switch 1 approaching the best-selling system of all time and the PlayStation 2. What is the follow-up for the Nintendo Switch 1? One of the best systems Nintendo has ever made. How is it going to do commercially? Well, there's no way to tell right now. It's going to be a very long generation for Nintendo. I see them going 8 years, maybe even more, having a revision, a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro, and just really extending this generation as long as possible. But I do think that there are some signs that show that this is going to be a mega hit console, and some people have invoked, oh, well, what if it's a Wii U situation? And that's not really a likely scenario. I don't think that's going to happen at all, and we've got new information and evidence that that is the case. Now, some people even said, okay, the Nintendo 3DS, and yeah, maybe so, but I don't think that's even going to be the case either, because Nintendo is throwing everything at the system. But we're going to get into that and so much more in just a bit. But let's start off with the new information that came out of Japan that shows massive interest of the Nintendo Switch to the tune of 2.2 million people applied for the Nintendo Switch 2 lottery in Japan. That is by far any type of record that you can think of overall when it comes down to it. Is definitely up there, or it surpasses it. This is by far the most demand that Nintendo has ever seen for a system pre-launch. Japan, it's going to go crazy. I talked about this before based off of the Famitsu. If you've been looking at that, you know what's going down there. But let's get into what Mr. Shuntaro Furukawa had to say himself. Because while there's a lot of people, over 2.2 million, that want a Nintendo Switch 2 in Japan, that doesn't mean Nintendo's actually going to be able to provide those 2.2 million on launch day. So here's what Mr. Furukawa had to say in a recent post on Twitter. Quote, on April 2nd, we announced the details of the Nintendo Switch 2 and launched the lottery on the My Nintendo store, which resulted in a huge number of applicants, approximately 2.2 million in Japan alone. However, this is far more than we had previously anticipated, and the number of Nintendo Switch 2 consoles that My Nintendo Store will be able to deliver on June 5th has been exceeded by a large margin. It is therefore very unfortunate that a significant number of customers will not be able to win when we announce the winners tomorrow, April 24th. In order to avoid the hassle of re-entering the lottery for those who did not win in the first lottery sale, the My Nintendo Store will automatically carry over those who did not win in the first lottery sale to the second lottery sale. However, we will not be able to respond to all the applicants received, even if we include the quantity from the second lottery sale. We sincerely apologize for not being able to meet your expectations despite our advanced preparations. We are currently taking the steps to meet this demand, including further strengthening our production system. As for product shipments, from tomorrow, April 24th onwards, game shops and online shops nationwide will sequentially begin accepting reservations or lottery sales of the Nintendo Switch 2 console. For details, please check the information provided by each retailer. The My Nintendo Store will also continue to sell the console after the launch date. Details will be provided at a later date. With cooperation from our retailers, we continue to ship the Nintendo Switch 2 and make every effort to deliver as many Nintendo Switch 2 units as possible to everyone. We are planning to produce and ship a considerable number of Nintendo Switch 2 in the future. We are very sorry, it will take us some time to meet your expectations. So shoutouts to Stealth on Twitter. He actually put this out there stating that the best selling system in a weekend in Japan was the PlayStation 2 with 1 million units. So the PS2 has been dominant in terms of many things for a very long time. This is the system that actually has the previous clout, that has the excitement, that has the games, that has the launch lineup, that has everything set up to actually be able to surpass that 1 million units. Now, Nintendo made advanced preparations. They knew people were going to be excited, but you have to look at it in comparison to the Nintendo Switch 1. That sold around 300,000 plus units in Japan in the first weekend, or whatever the case is, that launch week, and that was considered a big success. 2.2 million, that's like well more than the 300,000 plus. So the interest in this system has exploded. People are ready for this next system. Now, we've heard, like I said, people talk about how it's not going to do so well at launch because of some of the controversies, and I get that. Listen, there are definitely things to address, which we've addressed them here. We've got to also look outside of the echo chambers of online, and a lot of people just go to work, hang out with their family, come back, do whatever they want to do, and just want to play Mario, or just want to play Zelda, or just want to play Kirby, or want to play Mario Party. They don't really care about all the theatrics and all the different politics or all the different things that kind of go into what's happening here. They just want to play their game and be happy, and they're not constantly online. And I think that's the big thing here. This huge interest, obviously, we already knew this beforehand, that the online space doesn't necessarily prove anything overall with the general public. But at the same time, it just reassures us that that is the thing when it comes down to it. And this system is going to be a massive success. Now, I don't know if it's going to sell as much as the Nintendo Switch 1. It doesn't have to. Sony's never hit the PS2 numbers, and they've been fine when it comes to console sales. But I do think this system is going to be incredibly popular. And once again, Nintendo doesn't even have a 3D Mario announced yet. There's not even a Smash Brothers announced yet. What about when Animal Crossing comes out? How about the next Pokemon game, the new gen Pokemon after Pokemon Legends ZA? This system is going to be massive, and it's going to do incredibly well and dominate Japan. We'll see about the rest of the world, but I do think that it's going to do well in most regions, even with the price being higher. But I do have something that I want to talk about that's going to be later. I do think Nintendo's going to kind of chip in with retailers to kind of quell that a bit with trade-in programs and stuff. But I'd also love for all of you guys to trade in that unsub for a subscription on the channel. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Let's get into another interesting topic here that Nintendo has had to come out and kind of dispel some of the stuff that's going on there, and that's with the Nintendo Switch 2 GameCube controller. So there was some information that came out that the Nintendo Switch 2 GameCube controller would not be compatible with Nintendo Switch 2 games, and it can only be used for the app when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2. And of course, people online took that and ran with it. Even though that same disclaimer is up for every single controller Nintendo uses, people still took that and ran with it and tried to push it as, oh, this is the reason why this is a scam system, whatever, right? People just were doing that. Now, we have some clarification here, because remember, that disclaimer that Nintendo puts is with every controller, because the controllers have different button schemes and it might not be supported with every single game. So that's the reason why Nintendo states that, which that's happened before in the past. People talk about that, but it seemed like people wanted to leave that out. Now, Stealth has actually came out here, shout out to my man Stealth once again, and talked about this, because on Nintendo Life, they actually sought clarification and they got it. So Nintendo did confirm that Nintendo Switch 2 GameCube controllers will work with other Switch 2 games, just not GameCube classics. So the next Smash Brothers game is obviously going to launch, and this controller is clearly going to be a controller that people want to use. The reason why, once again, that Nintendo says it's not compatible with other games outside of it is because there's some button schemes that might not work or might not be comfortable with how they've got it here, or they're smaller, or whatever the case is, right? It might be off in terms of like the type of buttons and everything. So that's the reason why they do this. So it's like a blanket statement when it comes down to it, but they did confirm that yes, you'll be able to use it with other games overall. So just make sure that's aware, guys. You'll use it with other games. So you can use it with your Nintendo Switch GameCube app that's on there. You can use it with the other games, but obviously there could be some problems with other titles because of the configuration. So that's just something that I already knew, and I think a lot of people who already play Nintendo Switch knew, because we're used to that. But there are a lot of people that were looking for anything that they can do in terms of getting information and trying to say, oh, look, see, that's a huge problem. Not really. You're going to be able to use it. Let's get into the next topic here, and that is Ghost of Yotei. What is going on with this game? We've got an official release date for the game. I didn't know Sony was going to announce the release date, but it's coming out this October 2nd to be exact. So Ghost of Yotei will launch officially for the PlayStation 5. It's not coming to PS4. Keep that in mind, guys. PS5 exclusive game, October 2nd. Sony Interactive Entertainment and developer Sucker Punch Productions announced pre-orders will begin on May 2nd. There's also some interesting pre-orders when it comes to the collector's edition and all that, so we will discuss that in just a bit. So alongside today's news, we've also released the latest trailer for Ghost of Yotei. Onryo's list 16 years ago in the heart of Ezo, called Hokkaido in the present day, a gang of outlaws known as the Yotei Six took everything from Atsu. They killed her family and left her for dead, pinned to a burning ginkgo tree outside of her home. But Atsu survived. She learned to fight, to kill, to hunt, and after years away, she has returned to her home with the list of 6 names: the snake, the oni, the kitsune, the spider, the dragon, and the Lord Saito. One by one, she's hunting them down to avenge her family, armed with the same katana used to pin her to that burning tree all those years ago. But with Atsu's story begins with vengeance, she'll find there's more to her journey than just revenge. As she explores Etso, Atsu will meet unlikely allies and forge connections to help give her a new sense of purpose. We hope a brief look in today's trailer gave you a taste of what you can expect from Ghost of Yotei. Beyond the first look at Yotei 6, you'll spot some of the gorgeous scenery of Izo, as well as a handful of Atsu's new weapons, a few of her allies, and even a new gameplay mechanic that will allow you to glimpse Atsu's past and understand everything that was taken from her. Definitely like Assassin's Creed Shadows when it comes down to it. But that's okay. They were making this game at the same time. But we've only scratched the surface in Ghost of Yotei. We've built upon and evolved the way you explore the open world, offering even more freedom and variety than in Ghost of Tsushima. And that was one of my issues as a side note. That was one of my issues, was that there wasn't a lot of freedom. Despite it being an open world, you really couldn't do too much when it comes to exploration wise. Only at certain points you can climb and all that. So it looks like they're going to be changing that up. So that's definitely good. All right, back to it. You'll choose which leads to follow as you pick which Yotei 6 member you want to hunt down first. Atsu can also track other dangerous targets and claim bounties, or seek out Weapon Sensei to learn new skills. Izo is wild and as deadly as it is beautiful. As you trek across the open world, you'll find unexpected dangers and peaceful reprieves, including some returning activities from Tsushima, and you'll be able to build a campfire anywhere in the open world for a rest under the stars. We want you to have the freedom to explore Izo however you decide to, and we can't wait to share more. I did play Ghost of Tsushima for about 20 hours, and I got kind of tired of it. Overall, kind of got me like with the Assassin's Creed type of thing with the gameplay. There wasn't a lot of interactivity with the open world, so I kind of just got burnt out on it a bit. I do think that I'm going to go back in on the PS5 version of the game and play it in the better resolution and frame rate and kind of get through that, and I'll probably do that closer to the release of Ghost of Yotei. So I'll kind of do it like back to back, and I think that'd be pretty cool. Kind of like how I did with The Last of Us Part 2, where I went back and I played The Last of Us Part 1, played the DLC, then I went into The Last of Us Part 2, and that was pretty cool to have like that continuation of everything. So I think I'm going to do the same thing here with Ghost of Yotei, and it's looking really good so far from what they've shown off. I think it's going to be a great game. Sucker Punch, they rarely ever miss. They've done a great job with this game. I think it's going to be really good, and it's just going to add to the list of incredible games that are releasing in 2025. I mean, we have the Nintendo Switch 2 launch. That's going to be awesome. We've got stuff like Mario Kart. We've got Donkey Kong. We've got Metroid. We've got so many great games coming out. As of the time that I'm recording this video, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 has been releasing to critical acclaim Game of the Year contender. So there's been a lot of great stuff this year, and it's only going to get better with more announcements, with more stuff coming in, and just more content overall. It's almost overwhelming. Not even almost, it is. There's so many great games to play and just not enough time to play them with work and taking care of everything else. But it's a good problem to have. It's not a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing. So I'm looking forward to playing this one as well. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the final topic here, and it's a little bit of a follow-up, kind of getting back to the Nintendo Switch 2 sales stuff, where I actually discussed this in a previous video where the sales are kind of exploding in France. We have a bit more information. Shout out to my man Pierre. He's from the region, and he actually added a bit more context to what is happening with FNAC and what they said, because they said that the system levels are historic overall when it comes to the pre-orders and people getting excited. That I wanted to talk about this a bit more because it actually tag teams up with what Nintendo said about the My Nintendo store in Japan. So we're not just seeing it in smaller regions or in certain type of parts. It's in a lot of different parts that this system is going to be in very high demand. So FNAC also stated that they opened pre-orders just after the Direct on April 2nd. Now, regarding the hardware pre-orders, success is certain now. It's been established that this system is going to do incredibly well. FNAC also notes that the price is not a barrier at the moment and accessories are a hit. So yeah, the price is definitely higher than what we saw with the Nintendo Switch 1. And I do think that that price is interesting because I think that's when like the first wave of people, obviously the hardcore gamers, they don't really care. They're going to buy the system. They're going to be excited. They're looking forward to it. So yeah, you can't judge everything on that. But the thing about it is that wait until the second wave of Nintendo Switch 2 software. That's really what's going to help get the next wave of people that aren't quite convinced, the casual consumers. When you see stuff like Animal Crossing, when you see stuff like 3D Mario, Super Smash Brothers, the next mainline Pokemon, when it comes down to it, those are going to be all what helps. And I think that having great trade-in programs for the Nintendo Switch 1 is also going to be a big help. GameStop has a trade-in program that's looking to be pretty good right now in terms of just being able to go in there, trade in your system, actually transfer everything right there in store, then walk out with your new system. So I think that needs to be promoted and talked about throughout almost like the first number of years of the Nintendo Switch 2, because the prices are a bit higher now. But I will say this, as long as Nintendo doesn't raise the price of the Nintendo Switch 2, I do think that it's going to look like a pretty good deal once the next Xbox and once the next PlayStation come out, because of the tariff situation, because of just how the tech has been progressing. You look at the PS5 Pro, that's $700 right now at this point. Microsoft, despite selling pretty poorly overall, they've actually raised prices in many different regions, or at least Japan. I know maybe there's been other regions, but they have not price dropped the Xbox Series S or the X, and they've sold pretty bad in comparison to PlayStation and Nintendo. So I don't think there's going to be any big discounts or any super cheap systems next generation with these two. So I do think that the price right now might actually look pretty good going forward in the future. But we're definitely going to talk about that. That's going to be a video for another day. But what do you guys think overall with everything that we discussed here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out all my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.